Hi, I'm Mitesh, and this is my handmade home outside of Washington, D.C. So we were, in the search for a larger home as our family was growing. We really didn't have anything particular in mind except for just a little more space. And we actually saw quite a few homes, a lot of them, all different shapes and sizes. And really when we walked in here and we saw kind of just the amount of light that the house was getting, and it was really from the high ceilings, I think that just sold us. When I walked in, it was really bare white walls, builder grade paint, never had been painted. I just needed to bring in color and needed to bring in personality. And being our first home, I already had so many ideas of what I wanted to do. All design is kind of a work in progress, so I think over the first few years, really kind of started coming together room by room. My cultural background is a huge inspiration for my home and what I want to share. My family comes from the Gujarat state in India. My parents immigrated over in the 70s, and so a large part of my early childhood, I had spent summers going back to India to visit the grandparents and our extended family there, and just was absolutely drawn into the culture and the art that I would see around me. And a lot of it was folk art, which was done by the people, for the people, and would be on display everywhere. And I wanted to showcase it in a different context. One of the first areas that I knew we could, really bring life to it was our sunroom. It had a lot of light, especially in the afternoon. My favorite part is this swing feature. Swings are a real traditional feature in a lot of Indian homes, and it was something that I grew up with on my trips back, swinging with grandparents. And we sourced a vendor in India that actually made these swings with the hardware and was able to ship to the States. And so I kind of jumped on that, not knowing how we're actually gonna get it into the ceiling, but I knew that we'd figure it out somehow once we got it over. And I definitely wanted to make sure it had kind of the traditional brass chains, which are a little more ornate than kind of your typical chains. It's been one of our favorite features of the home now. I just love that it kind of connects to my childhood with the grandparents, on the swing, and I'm just happy to be able to create that feeling for our kids. Having these plants back here kind of just adds to the ambiance. You feel like you could be outdoors. We did put the grass cloth wallpaper, and I think it works really well in this room. It adds some texture and again, just that natural element that I think really brings it all together. I do love color in little pieces. This was originally just a natural cane, so I did go ahead and paint it green. These are all antiques from India, a milk container and food storage containers, and my grandmother had held on to some of these things. So every trip I would take, I would actually go and take things from them, and my grandmother would be like, "What are you gonna do with this? This is meaningless for us here," But I knew that it just meant so much, and I just loved the craftsmanship and just the stories that it would tell. This painting's really special because it's done in the Bichwai art style, which is a few centuries old, especially in Rajasthan. But I wanted it to kind of feel contemporary. So one of the reasons I love our sunroom is it's right off our kitchen where we spend most of our mornings and evenings. We started off with kind of light oak cabinets, so we did end up repainting them just to kind of make them fresh again. Tying in the green from the sunroom. It's actually the same shade, and it was leftover paint from the cabinet. Another favorite space of ours is the family room. Again, we get a lot of light in the afternoon, and I think it's everyone's favorite spot, especially in large groups and getting together. So I definitely wanted to add color into it as well as personality. And so a lot of that, comes from the collectibles that I've collected over the years, things that have been passed down to me, and really kind of ties into my heritage. So coming over here, I wanted to create these wall pieces. These are actually inspired by floor designs that are done in front of the home in India every day using rice flour paste, because I wanted to take that art, which normally gets washed away every day, and really bring it up to the walls so that it's a more permanent feature. I like to bring in color but not overdo it, and so this accent chair was perfect. I love that shade of orange. It again feels rooted and rustic. I really have kind of two influences that came together, and one is really kind of the mid-century modern, and then the other is kind of the traditional folk Indian art. You know, my parents immigrated from India to the US in the 70s, and you know, they were so eager to kind of furnish their home in like the style of that era because they wanted it to feel modern, and they were kind of moving away from their traditional roots. But at the same time, you know, my mother had brought back artifacts and things she had made, and so our walls would be plastered with kind of art from India, but the furniture and everything was, you know, completely to that era. And so along with that really came the color palette. My sense of color is that, you know, I love it, but at the same time, I wanted to make sure I did it in a way that wasn't too overstimulating. And so I just like, you know, starting off kind of with the clean slate, but then bringing it in, you know, with artwork and accessories, you know, cushions, some furniture. You know, the colors always, you know, make me happy. It's just something that I'm drawn to, brightens my mood. But then also kind of being surrounded by, you know, art that I've, you know, created makes it so personal. I love when, you know, we have people over and I can tell stories about the, you know, what inspired me to create certain pieces, and then where I've collected certain things from. I just love sharing about it, and that's how I actually ended up doing that online. Over the years, people would come over when they would see kind of the work that was put into the house. They always felt like more people needed to see this, or I would always get told, you know, why aren't you blogging or, you know, putting this somewhere or doing this for others? And so when the opportunity came, I sat down and started posting kind of images and just some things that were really important to me in the home. And the thing that surprised me the most was just how much it resonated with other people online. It was just a sense of community for people, you know, coming together that also appreciated the kind of art that I was collecting and that I was curating and creating. Folk art around the world, it's kind of a dying art, and I just love, you know, bringing it to life and bringing it to the present. You know, it comes from, you know, centuries of tradition, and I just love bringing it to the present and being able to share it with people that may just not know enough about it, and so that's kind of the best part. So for our dining space, this was the first time we were ever going to have kind of a large dining area, so we started off with you know, a big table. I'm most proud of this gallery wall, which is a collection of the artwork I've collected over the years. A lot of it is folk art from India, along with pieces that I've made inspired by that folk art. You know, we have these pieces that are made to look like paintings that you would find on, you know, mud homes in India. This is embroidery that comes from Gujarat, where my family's from, and this was actually something that was embroidered by my great-grandmother. You know, here's what's considered kind of our formal living space, but just ends up being extra hangout. One of the things I do like to do is kind of highlight contemporary artists from South Asia and India. This is a painting done by an artist from Mumbai, and try to also kind of incorporate those pieces. And then I also try to add my own art to it. So here's a piece that I actually painted, again, inspired by more contemporary art. So this is our guest bedroom, and as if my shirt didn't give it away, I love this color. That rustic orange just feels really earthy and grounded. So one of my favorite features of this room is this mural featuring Tree of Life, which is a common motif seen in a lot of folk art in India. And this is done in the Madhubani style of painting, which comes from northwest India. The room gets used by our relatives from India as well as, you know, the in-laws, and so really wanted to feel like home as well for them. So the inspiration for our primary bedroom was really the palaces of Rajasthan. These are inspired by motifs that you would see on woven saris that actually weave in gold and silver strands. And I love putting it on kind of jewel tones up here. So this is another one of my favorite corners in the house. Kind of love having this daybed. Kind of reminds me of some of the divans that you would see in India. One of the things that I love in this corner is this table that I DIY'd to make it look like bone inlay work, but instead it's just paint using stencils. Again, taking inspiration from the palaces, wanted to create the illusion of a window pattern. You know, at the same time, wanted to keep it subtle, so it's just a light whitewash here. And carried that over to this wall as well, and then a few smaller windows on the side. So this is our primary bathroom and our latest renovation project. And I think what really makes this special is the wallpaper, which is inspired by Pichwai painting, which comes from Rajasthan, India. It just brightens our day when we walk into that bathroom now in the morning. You know, it was a long time coming. We waited years to kind of redo this space and wanted to do it right, and I couldn't be happier with how it turned out. So part of the renovation was that we actually had you know, a built-in jacuzzi, you know, builder grade, and swapping it out for this freestanding tub has been great. Not only did it give us more space, but I think it just looks so much better. So this mirror, I actually had a year before we even started this space. It's a hand-carved mirror from India, and I knew it would be perfect for this wall. On this side, my favorite feature has to be these sconces, which I find so unique and carry kind of the onion dome shape. When people come over, the first thing they notice is, of course, the sunroom with the swing. And for people, you know, that come from similar background, that also spent time in India, you know, it just brings them back instantly to that time of their life. Subscribe to HGTV for more tours like this.